Kia ora, good evening. 70% of recommendations to protect the health of the Waituna Lagoon have been implemented by dairy farmers. That's according to Environment Southland's Dairy Farming in the Waituna Catchment October update, which says farmers have spent $1 million on the health of the lagoon. The updated action plan was presented to Council on Friday. Farmers, Dairy NZ, Fonterra and Council worked together to come up with on-farm actions to reduce the effects of farming on the lagoon. These actions were released last December. Environment Southland says farmers are making strong progress across all key areas. Southland guest nights fell almost 19% in September compared with the same time last year. According to Statistics New Zealand, guest nights in the region fell 18.8%. There were 39,000 guest nights in September compared with 48,000 in September 2011. Despite accommodation numbers seeing a boost from the Rugby World Cup in 2011, for the most part numbers have fallen on a monthly basis since late 2010. Venture South and Tourism Sector Manager Tareen Ellis says accommodation numbers have been impacted by the economic crisis with not as many people travelling. She says guest nights also drop in winter. Private prisons are a waste of taxpayer money, according to Labour Party Justice spokesperson Charles Chauvel. Sarah Bedford spoke to him about privatisation of prisons and what he thinks the alternative is.
I just don't think that they work. The evidence overseas is that the public, as taxpayers, pay a lot of money to private sector companies to run prisons. Those private sector companies, in order to be able to run those prisons efficiently and at a profit, have to pack inmates in, run a sausage factory model, and in the end their record about safety, about escapes, about secure and humane containment are all found to be wanting. All the evidence in the United Kingdom goes that way, the evidence of the detention centres that they run in Australia, and indeed our own experience with their running the Mount Eden Remand prison shows that compared to the public sector, they're just not as good at running prisons, and Labor wants to see good, well-run, safe prisons in New Zealand.
Now, Bill English has said that this will reduce reoffending, improve safety and performance. What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, it's against all the evidence. Secondly, the only way that the government has to enforce these private prison contracts is to fine the operator when they breach their obligations. Well, guess what happens? They simply pack more inmates in order to make more money, to make paying the fine economical as far as their profit motive is concerned.
And what do you think we should be doing then?
Well, I think there's some evidence that what we are doing in the public system is starting to work. First of all, we lock too many people up, and we need to start using alternative sentences, community-based sentences, the sentences that electronic monitoring gives us the possibilities for, so that instead of you and me as taxpayers paying $100,000 a year for every person that we lock up in it, well, the population was getting close to 10,000 at one point, so you can start to understand the implications of it. We have fewer people actually incarcerated. For those that are there, we look at making sure that they're incarcerated humanely and safely, and we start to look at how we actually rehabilitate them so that their prison experience is a one-off rather than a revolving door, which is the other issue we have. And then in respect of the others in the system who aren't actually in prison but are under some sort of sentence, again, the emphasis has to be on rehabilitation, rehabilitation, rehabilitation. In the end, the only way to guarantee public safety is to make sure that people who do bad things, first of all, understand that they were bad, and secondly, understand how and are given the tools not to do them again. And it's on that score that we fall down so badly in New Zealand.
An Invercargill school went to the horses today with more than 300 children taking part in their own Cup Day. Donovan Primary held a Trotting Cup Day in support of Southland horse Franco Ledger, racing tomorrow at the New Zealand Trotting Cup Day in Christchurch, trained by teacher Suzanne Hunter's husband. Children took part in a range of activities including sulky races, learning about horses, creating banners and a parade. Southland trainer and driver Hamish Hunter will race Franco Ledger tomorrow night. It's been 37 years since a Southland trained horse won the Cup. After the break, how a trip to the subantarctic could help a rare penguin species. Welcome back. The first ever simultaneous count of hoiho on Campbell and Auckland Islands will soon begin. A Department of Conservation expedition leaves for the subantarctic tomorrow and will provide information about yellow-eyed penguin that could help ensure the race species' survival. Auckland Islands expedition leader Joe Hiscock says the results will be known in around 6 months.
So that data we will be working up basically to get an estimate of the population, and that will get used for research proposals and will hopefully get used in the future for it to determine a baseline and to be able to gauge trend information for the populations. So effectively, it hasn't been done for so long that there's a real need in the literature and for management purposes to have a feel for what the population is doing.
Why do you think it hasn't been done for such a long time?
It's so hard. It's too expensive. It is quite a costly exercise, and it's an incredibly difficult place to work. You've got to have things fall into place. You have to have boats. You've got to have people. You've got to have the skills available. We're going to need some weather, but we can't do much about that. But it's just not somewhere that you can guarantee that you'll get a result, and we can't guarantee that we'll get a result on this trip. But we've got a lot of bases covered. Hopefully we'll come away with something.
Why do you think it is important that you do have a population estimate?
For trend information, particularly in reference to, for example, the fisheries, there's a lot of speculation over the impact that the fisheries is having. The sea lions, the Otago Peninsula, for example, has a lot of sea lions, and it's considered that the sea lions might be having an impact on that population. And the Auckland and Campbell Island, the subantarctic population, is considered a founding population. Some recent research has indicated that the subantarctic is actually a founding population for the New Zealand population. And if they are considered subspecies, we have very, very little information at all on that subspecies. So we need to get a feel for what that population is doing so that we can put management practices in place if need be to help protect them.
So what exactly will the surveying involve?
The surveying, I've got the teams themselves are going to have to get up early. It's all based around doing beach counts, so looking at how many penguins are moving backwards and forwards up the beach, and then getting an estimate from that of how many of those birds are breeding. So I've got 2 of my team will be left on Enderby, and they're going to be finding nests and marking the breeding birds, and then they're going to monitor those birds coming up and down the beach so that we can see out of all of the penguins that are counted during the survey, how many of those, the proportion of those that are breeding birds compared to non-breeding birds. And the rest of the team are going to be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and surveying a section of beach. The count starts at 5 o'clock in the morning and finishes at 9 o'clock. So those guys will be doing that every morning that we're down there.
Close to 600 people were pounding the pavement in and around Invercargill across 5 events for the Ascot Park Hotel Southland Festival of Running yesterday. The marathon, a 42.2 kilometre run, was won by Sam Reeford of Timaru with a time of 2 hours, 16 minutes and 35 seconds, the 3rd best time ever for the marathon and a personal best. The women's event was won by Tracy Woodford in around 3 hours 25. Other events included a 10 kilometre run and a marathon run for children. For Reeford, yesterday's result was pleasing. He was 28 minutes ahead of his nearest rival and had entered with the goal of winning.
Absolutely, yeah. I treat everyone, whatever race I'm in, with respect, and I think that's the best way to go. But absolutely, I'm definitely competitive, and winning's the first priority, and then time is second, yeah.
Now, you were hoping for a better time, but you have actually beaten everyone back by quite a decent amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, 2:14-ish would have been on the cards, but with the wind conditions, very tough. So yeah, and on your own as well. Solo running's never that easy. Marathon's tough enough as it is. Yeah.
So what was the attraction to come down and do the Southland Marathon?
Well, Barry McGee, my coach, is an Olympic bronze medalist, and one of Arthur Lydiard's boys suggested it'd be a good idea, so we put it in the diary and went for it, yeah.
Do you plan to come back and defend your title next year?
Unfortunately, I won't be back next year, but definitely in the future I'll be back to have a crack at that 2:12.20 of John Campbell's. I think it's gettable, yeah, absolutely.
The dedication and efforts of volunteers have been recognised at a special awards ceremony in Invercargill. 12 people were recognised for their service at the United Fire Brigades Association Awards on Saturday night. Among them, Senior Station Officer Neville Checketts for 50 years service, the first Invercargill firefighter to ever receive this recognition. Awards coordinator Bevan Miller says the annual event is held for volunteers, a mix of qualified firefighters and operational support members, to honour their work in supporting the fire service and protecting the community. A group of young Southlanders have had the chance to show off their hard-earned horsemanship skills. 5 riders took part in the Riding for Disabled Newcomers show at the Southland Equestrian Centre yesterday. The riders, aged 9 to 13, have been taking lessons at Riding for the Disabled Southland. Instructor Anne-Marie Flynn says lessons help the riders improve in a range of ways, including communication, mobility and stress levels. She says the purpose of the show is to give students something to strive towards, and also it gives them a great sense of achievement. And that's it from news. Coming up in sport, we preview the New Zealand Trotting Cup. From the news team, good night.